On this week's episode, we speak with Brooke, who is a first-time mum.
I really wanted to hold her after giving birth.
She recalls some of the cultural and language barriers that she had to navigate through.
He just looked at it, and I thought he was going to fall out of his chair.
And opens up about some of her struggles on this journey.
Being pregnant and feeling more vulnerable, maybe, it made it a little harder on me mentally.
Hello and welcome to Birth Stories of Japan. Welcome, Brooke, to Birth Stories of Japan. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. So I thought we'd start off with a little intro. Just where you're from, your family's names, and where you currently live.
Okay, so my name is Brooke, and this is Iroha.
Hi.
We are currently living in Yokohama, and I'm from the US. My husband is from Japan.
Nice. So I'd love to know, what was your journey to pregnancy like? Were you expecting it? Were you trying to get pregnant?
So we actually were trying. It was a little bit shocking. I'm 32 now, gave birth when I was 31, and I have been on birth control since, I don't know, like 16 years old, like nonstop. So when I came to Japan is actually when I stopped using birth control because, you can only bring so much into Japan, and then you'd have to go to the doctor and get a new prescription, and I was just like, eh. But yeah, just at some point, I was just like, hey, so what do you think about trying to have a baby? And he was like, okay. And we tried, and it worked. And I was really shocked because I thought that it would take time, especially after being on birth control for so long. I didn't think that the first try would result in this. But how I found out that I was pregnant was my breasts hurt really bad. So I was like, okay, well, I don't have this symptom for my monthly or my period. So, and this, I do remember my mom saying that was one of her first signs for when she was pregnant with me. So I was like, oh, so this is happening. I took a test at home, and then since it was so soon after, like I think it was maybe a week after when I started noticing pregnancy symptoms. So I took a test. It was kind of light, and I wasn't sure, I know any mark is supposed to mean positive, but me being super uneducated about it, I was like, well, I'll just try again in a week or so. And I did, and it was exactly the same. So then we went in, and yeah, he was like, yeah, there it is.
Wow. And what was your reaction, yours and your husband's reaction?
We were both really excited. I was in a really good headspace, I think, at that time, because I've always been terrified of pregnancy and birth. I never really imagined myself being the person that would be like, hey, let's make a baby. I always thought that if it happened, I would cry my eyes out from being scared. Which didn't happen. I was really excited for it. Of course, at the beginning stages of pregnancy, even though you know it's in there, it doesn't quite hit you right away that there's a baby inside of you because you don't feel anything. You don't really see anything on the ultrasound that looks like a baby. So it really didn't hit me until we found out the gender, and I was like, oh crap, we're having a baby.
Wow. And so how was your pregnancy? How did that go?
The beginning stages of my pregnancy were a little rough. I had really bad morning sickness. I mean, I'm sure other women have had it worse. I know that there are more severe forms of morning sickness, but I just remember like there were days when I would just cry because I couldn't eat anything. And my husband would be like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "I'm so hungry, but I can't eat." I think I almost had to go and get some fluids just to try and get something in me. I think it was probably only 4 weeks or so straight where I just couldn't really eat much. Wonton soup was like my savior. Just the broth, like that was like the only thing that I could get down. And crackers.
Yeah. Oh. How about the following part of it? You said that you found out your blood type.
Yeah, so when I first got pregnant, I was actually in Hiroshima, but I was going to like a really small clinic, like countryside in the middle of nowhere, and yeah, we just went in for the blood work, and when the doctor had, all the information, he didn't speak any English, and I don't speak Japanese. He just looked at it, and I thought he was going to fall out of his chair. Like, he was so shocked. And then, without telling me what's going on, he was just like telling the nurses to get more blood work, getting all of them together. There's like 3 nurses rushing to get everything. And I was like, what? Like, what's going on? What's the problem? I'm thinking like there's something wrong with me. Something's wrong with the baby. And then it wasn't until after, like, I don't know, they started drawing my blood, and my husband was like, oh, he says your blood type is Rh negative. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Like, why are they freaking out? I didn't know that I had Rh negative blood. Like, my husband didn't know what it meant either. But yeah, I was crying on the way home because I didn't understand like what it meant, and no one explained it to me. But then after I researched it a little more, and I think I posted in a pregnancy group about it, and they were like, oh, it just means like you need to get, the shot. There's a specific shot you get when you have the negative blood type, especially if your partner has a positive one. And of course, my husband being Japanese means he's almost definitely has a positive blood type, and he has A positive. So, and so does she. So I definitely needed the shot.
Wow, yeah. So it was a good thing that the doctor pointed out to you, but just the way he pointed it out to you maybe could have been handled differently.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, maybe in the US it wouldn't have been so shocking, but I guess negative blood types are not very common in Japan.
Yeah. So how about the rest of your pregnancy? I know that you kind of struggled with parts of it, with a lot of it. Do you want to talk through that?
At some point, I believe maybe just under 20 weeks, we moved back to the Tokyo area, and it was a little more overwhelming, I think, for me to go from countryside to big city. It's just like being pregnant and feeling more vulnerable, maybe. It made it a little harder on me mentally. And I have something that's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a problem with the joints anyways. With Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS, we produce faulty collagen. So when we overextend, we're basically just damaging things.
Wow.
It doesn't repair, or it at least doesn't repair as well as other people. And then, of course, being in Japan, you have to walk everywhere, which kind of sucks when you're pregnant. It was just terrible. And then just walking caused so much pain for me. And I tried using like belly bands and, those different pregnancy support items, but they might work for a little bit, but they didn't do much. So with pregnancy, everything starts to stretch, everything just gets looser, and it was rough on my EDS. It was so rough. So physically, that was going on, and then just mentally, I think after the realization finally hit that I was actually having a baby, it started to get, the idea of it is really heavy, like it's a major change, a huge sense of responsibility. Like, I started thinking like, oh my gosh, like, can I do this? And then when she started kicking, it got even worse. I felt really bad about it because most women love that point in the pregnancy, the kicking. They're like, oh, like trying to show it off. And I thought that I would like it. In the beginning, the flutters, I liked the flutters. But once she started like kicking hard, oh my gosh, I started having anxiety attacks from it. I hated the feeling. It was so painful. Oh, I'm sorry. Does that make you upset? Yeah, I actually went to a mental health clinic because that's what my hospital suggested that I do because I had such a negative reaction to her kicks. The biggest support though was my husband. So like whenever I was having an anxiety attack or something, he was my rock in all of it.
Oh gosh, well I'm glad you had him. And does he have family here as well? So they were able to support as well?
I mean, somewhat. They don't speak any English, so that makes it difficult. He's the only one in the family that speaks English fluently. Ow. She has a little tooth coming in, so she's biting me.
Oh, it's that time, is it?
Yeah. Yes.
And then so you moving to Tokyo, that means that your facility and your care changed. Do you want to talk about how you chose where you moved to and what that hospital was called?
So we chose Ikuryo because they have my biggest things were having an epidural option. I wanted to try without an epidural, but I was not confident in my ability to do without. So I was like, it needs to be an option. And also, I want my husband to be there. You know, with COVID going on, a lot of hospitals didn't allow the spouse to be in the room at all during the birth. But Ikuryo was one of the ones that were the most lenient with the rules. And since I didn't speak Japanese, they also allowed him to come to every single one of the prenatal visits because he would translate.
So, in the late stages of pregnancy, were there any differences or change in mentality, or was that still the same?
I think my mentality got worse. The closer it came to the due date, I was just really scared. Like, I tried looking up hypnobirthing things, like, you know, trying to mentally make it better. I tried doing the affirmations things, but it just felt so weird for me to do the affirmations. It didn't feel genuine. I mean, I know people say to do it even if you don't believe it and eventually you will, but like it just didn't work for me. It didn't, yeah, it just got worse. At some point I couldn't hardly walk at all. It was just so painful to just walk, even going like down the street was really painful. My husband threatened to get me a wheelchair.
Oh, it sounds like he was really supportive, though.
Yeah, he was. And even though like it hurt to walk, there would be times where, you know, he would try to get me to walk even just a little bit in the daytime, when it was cooler out or anything.
Mm. And then, so how about let's talk about going into labor?
My labor and birth story is that nothing went according to plan. I went to 41 weeks. Yeah, I remember crying in the waiting room because they told me that I was going to be induced. I think that was on a Monday, and I had the option of Wednesday or Thursday, and I was like, well, if it's happening, it's happening, so let's just get it over with. So I decided on Wednesday. We went in at 8 a.m. on Wednesday, and I was induced shortly after. I didn't really feel anything for a while. It wasn't until 7 p.m. that night when I started to really feel contractions. And yeah, they don't feel good.
Yeah, I agree.
Not at all. I really, really struggled. And yeah, that whole night was just awful. I tried so hard to make it through, and there was one nurse there that was working that night that was so helpful. My husband wasn't there because we have a dog, and so that night he just went home and took care of the dog. The nurse was really helpful though, but she got me like incense, like lavender incense, and she gave me massages, and she was really helpful. I really liked her. So I started having the contractions at 7 p.m. at night. I got checked again at 8 a.m. the next morning, and my cervix was completely closed when he checked in the morning. So he was like, okay, we're going to do the balloon method. But at some point, I was like, there was another nurse that came in, and she was like, are you okay? Like, is everything going okay? And I was like, just barely uttered the words like epidural. And she was like, are you sure you want the epidural without your husband here? And I got so irritated by that comment. Like, why do I need my husband here? Like, I can make my own decisions. Like, like I'm telling you that I cannot handle this anymore. Like, I thought I was going to throw up with every single contraction. I couldn't handle it. And I was only 2 centimeters that entire time. I told my husband that I just messaged him through line. I was like, I'm getting epidural. And when I read the messages later, my messages were so short because I could not focus on anything. I was just like, I'm getting epidural. They're moving me. Where are you? They're asking for you. like I couldn't do full sentences at all. And we were in the process of moving at that time. So he was waiting on something. I can't remember what exactly he was waiting on, but yeah, he was like, I'm on my way. Yeah, and then so after I got the epidural, like I think he walked in right as they were preparing to stick me with the epidural. So he was there. He was actually there for it, and it was so much better after the epidural. So much better. I felt like, oh, okay, I can do this. So from noon to like almost 4, I went from 2 to 8 centimeters. And
Nice.
he was like, he said he wasn't expecting that at all. Like they were fully prepared for me to be there until the next day. But unfortunately, her heart rate kept dropping throughout the whole process. And at first, they weren't too worried about it. They were like, well, we'll just keep an eye on it. But I guess at some point, the doctor did get worried about it. And even though I was only 8 centimeters, he was like, you want to try maybe pushing? And I was like, okay. So I tried, but yeah, nothing. And her heart rate just kept dropping. And so they were like, we really strongly recommend that you go into a C-section right now. And I was like, when my husband told me, he just looked at me. He was just like, the doctor really thinks you should get a C-section. And my heart just dropped. Like, I really didn't want a C-section. I think I have like medical anxiety really bad. But, just anytime I've had to be put to sleep or go into any kind of major or somewhat major surgery, I just have a panic attack and I cry until they knock me out. So, so I just started crying, and my husband was like, let me go get your medicine. So he got the medicine for me, my panic attack medicine that I'm not even sure if it actually works or not. But I cried the entire time. The nurses were like trying to calm me down, like, it's okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
But I just like, when they wheeled me in there, and husbands are not allowed, or spouses are not allowed during the C-section process like they are in the US. So that was one of the reasons why I really didn't want to have a C-section, because I felt like I would be alone, I'd be by myself. I didn't want that. But, if it was for her safety and the doctor was strongly suggesting it, I didn't want to risk anything. So I was just like, just do it. Like, let's get this over with. I believe the total was just over 30 hours. from the point of being induced to having the C-section, I would say I want to say it was like 32 hours around. I barely remember the C-section process. Like, I think I did fall asleep at one point, like while they were stitching me up. I kind of remember hearing her cries. I kind of remember seeing her, like them showing me her, but I don't remember it very clearly at all. And I don't even really know how long it took for them to like sew me back up. I just remember like kind of waking up in the room, and they were like getting ready to transfer me from one bed to the other. And my husband had been with the baby that whole time. So he came in and he told me the name that he wanted to name her because he didn't want to announce anything until he told me. So we had already decided on an American name. We were kind of, going between names, and we decided to wait until we saw her to decide on a Japanese name. So that's what we did. And that's when I found out that her name was Iroha as well. But before they brought my daughter in, my husband FaceTimed my mom for me. And I just remember crying and just feeling so bad. Like I really wanted to hold her after giving birth. I wanted to hold her so bad. I wanted to have that like special moment that women have with their babies after they're born, and I didn't get that. And so like I was crying to my mom. My mom also had C-section. She had 4 C-sections. So I don't know if she felt the same way, but she was just like, it's okay. Like, it's fine. All that matters is your baby is here. She's healthy. Like, you did it. Don't worry. Like, you have all the time now to cuddle your daughter.
Yeah.
So
Aww.
that did make me feel a little better, but even now when I think about it, like I still feel like crying. Like I just feel like I missed out on that moment that I just really, really wanted to have with her.
Totally. Yeah. It can be so hard when you have this idea, of what birth is supposed to be, what you really want, and then birth actually comes and it's like, oh my gosh, there's just no preparation for what's to come, hey?
Yeah, even if you do prepare, I feel like being in the moment, just everything. Like I even took the breathing classes, with Stephanie. I did that on the online one, and all of that was just so far away from my mind when I was in the actual process of going through the contractions. Like I couldn't breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you. And then how about your postpartum recovery? So physically and mentally, what was that like?
That was also rough.
Yeah.
My postpartum recovery was yeah, it was rough. I know for C-section in the US, most women are out in 1 or 2 days, which blows my mind after having a C-section. Like even my sister was grocery shopping a week after her C-section. And I was like, I can't even imagine doing anything like that. um, I am 6 months postpartum now, and I still have pain around my scar area and in my stomach, like that area between the scar and the belly button is like, I don't know, it's really painful sometimes, especially if I'm like holding her for a long period of time. But I still had trouble walking for a long time after pregnancy. And I mentioned that we have a dog. This is my dog that I've had since he was like 12 weeks old, and he's 8 years old now. And when I got pregnant, at some point when it became painful to walk, my husband has been walking him every single day, morning and night, until basically even now he still does it. But It was just so painful to walk. So I was in the hospital for a week. And yeah, actually that stay was great. Getting meals 3 times a day served to you. That was great.
Yeah. I think we all love that part, don't we?
Yes, they were really like elaborate meals. My family back home was really jealous.
Oh, nice. And how about breastfeeding? Did she latch well or?
She latched really well. She had no issues. Basically, as soon as they gave her to me, they were like, "Do you want to try?" And I was like, "Okay, I guess." And yeah, she latched right away. Of course, it took a little bit for my milk to come in, which was really stressful. Waiting for it to come in because you feel like you're starving your baby. Like you're just like, what's wrong with me? I think it came in on day 4. Of course, after I spent the entire day crying my eyes out in the hospital. It was just, I remember the nurses like trying to console me and it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
My husband had to come in, and the really nice night nurse that I was talking about that helped me through the contractions, like her and my husband like talked and was like, it's more important that you be mentally okay right now than trying to force feed the baby. She's like, you don't need to stress so much about it. But yeah, my milk did come in and it really came in. I was not prepared at all. I did not research enough about breastfeeding. I just like the basics, like, maybe your baby will have trouble latching or maybe it takes some time. I didn't research much past that. So I wasn't prepared for the letdown that can occur. And that letdown, I think I was changing like 2 or 3 times a day because I was like, it was just so much. It was just completely soaked.
Yeah. Ask and you shall receive, hey?
I was like, I didn't want this.
So after you've left the hospital and gone back home, what was the first few weeks, few months of being a mum like for you?
The first month was okay. The first few weeks were okay. My husband had paternity leave. So he decided to do like the split paternity leave, which was like a newer idea where they could take some time off, work for a little bit, and take some time off again, which ended up being a bad idea for us. That was when I realized that I was experiencing postpartum depression. So when my husband went back to work, so he had 1 month off after she was born. And then he went back to work for, I think it was just under a month. And then he was going to take another month off for paternity leave. And that month in between was so difficult. It was so hard. Like I said, just not knowing how to find the time to go to the bathroom or like brush my teeth or change clothes or anything. Like I just didn't know how to do it by myself. And I still struggle, like, even now, because she's so attached. It's so hard to get away from her. But I have, like, an upstairs and a downstairs, so I kept, like, a little baby lounger in front of each bathroom so I could just put her down in a safe spot right in front of me because she just screams if I put her in the bassinet or anywhere, and then she can't see me. Hates it. Now it's getting a little more difficult because she's moving a lot. Yeah, but that month off was really hard. And then when he came back, it was like just so different with him being here all the time. Like I was like, oh, okay, like I feel good again. I feel fine. I can do this. This is great. And then when that month was up, it was the same thing all over again. Just so hard, me crying all the time. And I felt really bad because he would have to take time off of work sometimes. Or there was one evening where I was just crying all day long. He came back from work and he was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm here right now. I'll take care of the baby. I was so depressed the rest of that night. and then into the morning, I thought he had left for work, and I just started crying again. But he didn't leave for work, and he came up and he just immediately just took the rest of the day off. He's like, I'm not going to work today, just to be with me. And then he just took me out somewhere. He's like, you need to get out of the house. He obviously can't take time off all the time, but even now when I start to get really depressed or I start having a really difficult time, he gives me like a mission, which is usually to go to Starbucks or something, like just to get out of the house. And I always, I tell him I don't feel like it. I don't want to go out today, but I end up doing it anyways. And I do feel a little bit better.
Bravo. Honestly, depression is something else. When you're in it, you just can't see the reasoning behind doing anything like that. So for you to follow through is huge.
Yeah, I think it's becomes less for me and more for him. Like, when he gets home, he's gonna ask me like, "Oh, what did you get at Starbucks?" And so I just started like sending him pictures of like, I did it. I went to Starbucks. Here's my proof.
Oh, that's so awesome. And so that's helped you through it, through postpartum depression?
It does help me a little bit, just getting out. Um, of course, there are some things that I feel like can't be helped. Being away from my family in a foreign country. It's not like I can just get in the car and drive over to see them or anything. So that's definitely rough. I mean, I really miss my family, my mom and my sister. My next youngest sister also has a child of her own who's going to be 2 this year. So talking to them, I talked to my sister a lot during my pregnancy. And then postpartum, I talk to my mom sometimes, my sister sometimes, and my grandmother as well. My grandmother has helped me a lot postpartum. Some people have told me that postpartum depression anxiety doesn't go away on its own. So I'm not sure how true that is, but I just keep hoping like, oh, maybe today will be better, or maybe I'll feel better tomorrow. I do think that I probably should talk to somebody. I don't know how easy it would be to find an English speaking therapist, or, you know, someone who understands the struggles of being like a foreigner in Japan. Even if I saw like a Japanese doctor who could speak English, like, would they understand those struggles? And then, you also hear how people don't take anxiety and depression very seriously in Japan. So that also concerns me. Like, if I went to go see a doctor and they kind of like brushed it off, like it's not a big deal, that would just be like, okay, this isn't going to do anything. And I think that it should be talked about more, because a lot of women just feel like there's something wrong with them when they have these thoughts and these feelings. Like when I wasn't happy about the kicks, I really thought something was wrong with me. Like, like every woman is like, oh my God, like this is amazing. I can feel my baby, and trying to get everyone to touch it and feel it. And I was having panic attacks, like I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, this is supposed to be a happy time. I'm supposed to feel good about this. Why am I not happy about this? Why am I not happy about pregnancy? Why do I not feel positive about birth? And it's just, most people post only the good parts about pregnancy and only the good parts about the birth. And so when I first made a post about it on my Facebook, I tried to update my family and my friends a lot. And I really hesitated to post like how I felt. But when I did, there were lots of my other friends in the States who have given birth and had children. And they were like, wow, like this is me exactly. Like I felt exactly like this. And, like it doesn't cure everything, but it does make you feel better to know that you're not alone. There's not something wrong with you. This is normal. A lot of women go through this. And also just talking to your husband, it can be a little hard. Like I feel bad sometimes because I feel like I'm putting a lot of pressure or a lot of stress on him, but I think it's important because, you know, the stress will come out eventually. It will come out in one way or the other through tears or anger. And, you know, that's not fair to him either if it comes out in an angry way directed towards him because I'm stressed over all the, you know, just being a mom. So I feel like I'm really fortunate that I have really understanding husband, I have really understanding family and friends that don't make me feel like, you know, this isn't normal. I think the worst thing, I wouldn't say it's the worst thing, but the one thing that really irritated me at first is like when I tried to say how much I was struggling and people would just be like, "Oh, just enjoy it." You know, like just enjoy it. This is a beautiful time in your life. You're going to miss it one day. And, you know, in the moment when you're going through it, you don't want to be told to just enjoy it. You want somebody to validate your feelings.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that's so important for other people to hear because, yeah, as you said, you were definitely not the only one. Definitely not. So, looking back at the whole experience, do you know how much it cost in the end?
A lot. um, I don't know with the little ticket things for like the prenatal visits, but like the actual labor and birthing process and stay at Ikuryo before the government help it was 4,200 about US dollars for us when we gave birth, and I think it just recently increased this year. But before that, it was around $12,000, which I was like, that's a lot. I wasn't prepared for it. But after I think we paid just over $7,000. I know Ikuryo is like basically one of the most expensive hospitals in Japan in general. But I still wasn't expecting it to be that much because you hear about other women that are like, yeah, it costs like $600, $500, $1,000. Some women even said they made money back if they lived in like the country's like way countryside area where it's like really cheap. And so I was like, oh, okay, maybe it'll cost 1,000, 2,000. But no. I mean, if we had stayed in Hiroshima and I gave birth there, I think it would have been closer to like the 600 to $1,000. But I just was not willing to give birth in a hospital without the option of epidural or having my husband there.
Yeah, fair enough. And luckily you did by the sounds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to finish off with I've got a bottle here with me and it's just got some random questions. I'm just going to pick one out and ask you.
Okay.
Oh, so are you planning to have more babies?
Um, so we bought this house with the idea of having at least 2 children. There is a part of me that definitely wants to have at least one more, but there's also a part of me that really struggles with that idea. Like, you know, with having my daughter now and struggling with the pregnancy and the birth and after onwards forever. There's a part of me that wonders if I can have another one, you know, mentally, if I can deal with it. There's even just yesterday, I was reading, you know, about how often I should be feeding her solids. You know, she's 6 months now, so she's starting to do solids, and I'm trying to do baby-led weaning, and it's like, oh, well, by 1 year old, you should feed them 3 meals and 2 snacks. And I was like, it was like kind of like a realization, like, oh my God, I have to feed this thing 5 times a day. I was like, I don't even make myself breakfast in the morning, and I'm living off of food delivery service right now.
Oh my god. Oh, I can 100% relate to this part, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I was like, oh my God. And then, like, I was just like, can I do this? Like, can I feed a child 5 times per day, like 3 meals and 2 snacks? I burn water. I have literally set a pot of water on fire before. So it's like I need to like make meals and then I have to think about doing this all over again if we have another baby. And
Yeah.
it's just like, you know what? Like I just decided we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, cool. And I'll just ask one more. Have you found any mum or support groups in your area? And if so, have they been helpful?
So we went to I think it's called the Jidokan, the little mom and baby center, community center. We've gone to actually like 3 different ones and basically hitting up all the free ones in the area. And we met one Japanese mom who could speak English, and we ended up going to like another area to check out a little baby area, but we haven't really hung out with her or talked to her much since. Of course, now it's disgustingly hot out already, so nobody wants to go anywhere usually.
Yeah.
And then through the Tokyo, I think through the a Kawasaki moms group, because that was like the closest area I could find to where I live with dealing with parents and moms. I actually connected with somebody who went to junior high school with my husband.
Nice.
So, and she has a 7-month-old daughter, so just 1 month older than my daughter. So we're actually planning to meet her sometime in the next few weeks. We're planning to meet her. So hopefully.
Oh, awesome. That's so nice. And I just want to end it on, do you have any advice for anybody else out there who might be going through postpartum depression or any mental well-being issues, or just any advice in general for first-time mums?
I would say definitely just talk about it. There have been, especially in the very beginning, like it's like something you almost don't want to admit to. It makes you feel like, I don't know, like you're not a good mom for some reason. And it wasn't made any easier when I was actually told by somebody that only weak moms go through postpartum depression. And I was like, wow, I felt like, oh, like I must be a weak mom, like, so I don't think that it makes you weak at all. I think it's just something that some, or I would say even most moms go through at least for a, a certain period of time. And just talking about it to somebody who will listen, somebody that you trust, first of all, to talk to. And if you don't have anybody that you can trust, definitely talking to a doctor, I would say, is the next best step. Like, I've even seen like mom groups where they put the anonymous post on, so you can post on Facebook. And if you're still like feeling anxious about it or embarrassed by it, you can just go anonymously. And I think that most people will find a lot more support than, shaming for it.
Yeah, that is really good advice, I think.
I just wanted to say one more thing that a lot of advice that people kept giving me that I kind of felt was a little unhelpful is a lot of people say like, oh, like it gets better. It gets easier. Don't worry. And for me, I kept waiting for this moment to happen. I know I'm only 6 months in, but it was like at the beginning, they would be like, oh, just wait till like a few months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. They just kept saying like, it gets better. It gets easier. I don't think that it does get easier. I think it just gets differently hard. And so I think a little bit of that, like holding on to that easier time kind of set me up for disappointment when it didn't get easier. I'm sure it does for some moms, but if it doesn't, it's like you learn to handle it. It's just the time to process the new milestones is really hard at each stage.
Yeah, wow. That is, yeah, really important to hear. because I think a lot of people naturally gravitate to just saying that, But honestly, it is what it is. We don't know what's around the corner. Mum life is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Unpredictable, and no matter how much you read, you're never prepared for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I have so much gratitude, also so much sympathy as well for your story and what you've been through. But I don't know what you think, but I think you're super strong. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and for dealing with, our... She's still wide awake. She's watching Miss Rachel now.
She was awesome. Iroha was perfect. All right, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
So if you'd like to hear more birth stories, please subscribe to this channel. Giving us a like also helps other moms see this video too, so please give us a thumbs up if you can. You can check out the description for more information about bits mentioned in this episode, but if you have any other questions or feedback, please leave a comment below or get in touch. And lastly, if you're a mama that has a story to tell, please send an email to birthstoriesofjapan@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.